Hey everybody, it's Baron Von Spee here with another video for Christian Clash, and I'm delighted again to be joined by Pastor Brad. We're going to be talking about another in our series of videos on Christian living. And Pastor Brad, tell us how you're doing today.
I'm doing great, and I'm in a much quieter location this time.
Hey, there you go. We don't have any wildlife or birds or strange sounds or any of that crazy stuff going on in the background. So hopefully we've got some good sonics for today's program. Well, listen, we've got what I think is a really relevant topic for our program today, and that's materialism, loving stuff. And being that we are 2 days after Christmas, a day where for millions of people, it is really kind of the king of materialism. It's the day where everybody is so focused on what did you get? And that's usually the biggest question people ask friends, family, neighbors, whatever, after Christmas. It's not, hey, how was your service? How did church go? What was the passage you talked about? Hey, did you enjoy time with your family? No, the biggest question is, what did you get? And so everybody's focused on materialism and stuff. And you even go back to Thanksgiving, and we've got Black Friday, where literally people are beating each other up, pushing and shoving each other to get in the door of stores. I mean, violence occurs because people are so obsessed with stuff. Pastor Brad, why do we love stuff so much?
I think we love stuff. Maybe it starts because we want what other people have. We're told, hey, this is the go-to thing you've got to have. Or other people are having a good time with something, and we say, hey, I think I would have a good time if I had something like that. And so I think the best things, like what we do with Christian Clash, combine those things. They build relationship into their games. That's where we excel, and we hope to, we know people are going to have things, but we want to make sure that we always include relationship with that too. I love my family, really glad we're back in Indiana, back at our house and everything, but I'm also glad I have something called a furnace because it was -7 last night. I'm glad I didn't just have people, but I had a thing also. But I've got to keep my right focus. I've got to have people and put them in the right place as special creations of God.
It's interesting that when you talk about the Ten Commandments and you talk about different things that God was concerned about and putting some guidelines and rules in place that would help humanity prosper and live better, obviously one of those things was coveting and not coveting somebody else's materials or stuff. Even cheating on somebody, which could be considered coveting somebody's wife or husband, having another god before you, which could be coveting something that, especially in older times where there were so many gods and the Greeks and Romans had all their gods, coveting another religious figure. So there's a lot of focus on coveting. And answer this question maybe, should Christians, we as Christian people, should we resist this materialism that we see in society?
I completely think that we should resist it. I think that it's going to be a part of things, but we do have to push away. Christians have gone to pretty big extremes through the history of Christianity of getting away from those kind of things, to people living literally in caves, to be away from everything the world has to offer and trying to only find worship. And that's not necessarily where I'm encouraging us to go today.
Okay, so we don't need to live in
But
caves. Okay, we've got that down. That's good to know.
you don't have to become bare in the skylight and go live on top of a little rock or anything like that either. So you'll be okay.
We don't need to be, no spoilers here, but we don't need to be Luke Skywalker isolating ourselves from the rest of society.
Right.
Okay, good deal. Well, I know you've got some verses that touch on materialism. I've got a couple as well that I'll share, and I would love to hear the ones that you've got. And people, I would really encourage you to look these up and keep notes of these. They're moral lessons that I think we all know and appreciate, but we also need to keep them in mind. And I think it's important that God has put so many different biblical nuggets in the Bible about materialism and possessions. But here are two verses that I like as I was thinking of this topic. First is Hebrews 13:5. That says, "Keep your life free from the love of money and be content with what you have." Excellent words. For God has said, quote, "I will never leave you or forsake you." So let's not be focused on material possessions or stuff, because we have God who's so much more important than that. Second verse is 1 John 2:16. "For all that is in the world, the desires of the flesh and the desires of the eyes and pride in possessions, is not from the Father, but is from the world." So we know clearly materialism and the love of stuff is not of God. Is that right? And what verses do you have to go with those?
Yeah, I love how the Bible brings out stories. So I'm going to jump into a story in Luke chapter 10 here in just a second. But I'd say materialism is considered a societal norm for where I live. It's as if the people with the most stuff seem to be the happiest. But I want to tell everybody, don't believe it. People often substitute stuff for a lack of real connection with other people. Stuff can never give us what we can get from other people, though. God created us to rely on one another and build each other up during times of distress. And you won't get that. You won't get those benefits from stuff. And so I encourage you to learn early in your life, early in the game, that people should always be more important than possessions. So on to Luke 10. That's where Jesus visits Martha and Mary. It says, now as they went on their way, he entered a certain village where a woman named Martha welcomed him into her home. She had a sister named Mary who sat at the Lord's feet and listened to what he was saying. But Martha was distracted by her many tasks. So she came and asked him, Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to do all the work by myself? Tell her then to help me. But the Lord answered her, Martha, Martha, you are worried and distracted by many things. There is need of only one thing. Mary has chosen the better part, which will not be taken away from her. So spending the time in relationship, listening to Jesus' words, I think it goes, obviously we should listen to Jesus' words, but it goes even further into listening to other people, talking to other people. And I think Jesus says that that's the better part.
Absolutely. Now, I think we have a good understanding of the Bible verses and the passages that you shared, and the ones that I mentioned, and I think we can understand that we shouldn't have this materialistic desire. We shouldn't be so focused on the things that we can't take with us after we die. So how can Christians resist materialism? It's a very difficult thing to do, and people who know me and know my wife and I, they they know that I'm a pretty anti-stuff type person. I'm kind of the opposite of the hoarder mentality. I don't like a lot of stuff, but admittedly, I love the things that I do love. I love cars, for example, and I'm always drawn to cars and nice cars or homes, for example. So I've always been drawn to those things. It's a difficult temptation to resist, but how can we do that? How can Christians resist materialism?
Well, I remember even my first year in ministry probably, I was working on this great event. It was a fifth quarter coffee house. We were going to have all kinds of music, a live band, coffee house, snack shop. All the kids were going to come over after the game, and four quarters of the game, and then we were the fifth quarter thing. And we had been doing it. We built up. We're having over 100 kids come out to our fifth quarter events, and I was busy setting up, getting everything ready. And this guy shows up. His name was Jack. I remember that. And Jack shows up and he wants to talk to me, and I'm like, man. I didn't say this out loud, but I was like, man, I got stuff to do. I got busy things to do. I got to be setting up coffee. I got to start making this stuff. I got to get ready. And I felt like God just interrupted and said, he's more important than your thing.
Mm.
And that was for me in ministry when I got the wake-up call. And I always had to remember, I have to worry about the people who are around me more than setting up for my big ministry idea. And so that's something that God radically invaded my life with that. And since then, I've had times where I've had to say, stop. It's more about the people I'm doing this time with than about the thing that we're trying to produce to honor God. And I think also, family-wise this year, my mom sent some money to us to celebrate Christmas. She lives in Florida. We live in Indiana. And we talked to our kids and said, hey, what if we used that money and went and visited Nana instead of buying things from her? And that's why you heard from me and all the birds last time we were on the call, because we went to go spend time with my mom instead of buying things that we would keep in our closets and our rooms. We wanted to go spend time with her.
Excellent points. And that's a good segue into my next question, which is what are good substitutes for stuff? If we're having a real problem with this focus on different things, what can we substitute? What can we replace that focus with?
I think it really is just time and relationship with people and finding out what they like, finding out what's interests them, and having discussions and playing games together. My sixth grader is really into board games right now. I realize that's things, but he's into board games because everybody sits around the table and they have these conversations. So it's a combination there where his focus is spending time with people sitting around the table. And so sometimes it's not getting rid of everything, kind of like your anti-hoarder thing. Sometimes it is just saying, hey, I'm going to use these things to build relationships and go beyond the things or the games or the activities and also focus on the relationship with people.
Excellent. Excellent. Relationships are a great substitute. Relationship with God, with people in your church, your family, your neighbors, what have you. So good substitutes for stuff are relationships and spending time. I wanted to ask you a final question, maybe to just talk about this. It's a verse, and we didn't really talk about this before, but I think it's a good final question to end on. I have displaying on my screen that people will see in the video. It's a dollar bill, and on the back of the dollar bill it says, "I am a piece of paper and I control your life." And it kind of reminds me of the verse talking about the love of money is the root of all evil. And I think a lot of people misunderstand that, and they think that money itself is the root of all evil. And money to me is a medium, just like music could be a medium or the internet could be a medium. You know, music, the internet, money, those are things that can be used for good, for kingdom purposes, for Christian purposes, or just everyday purposes, you know, living or what have you, that are perfectly fine. And they can be used for evil. We can use money as something we worship. You know, music can be, or the internet can be used for evil. So maybe talk about that for just a second before we close, on just how we shouldn't be worshiping stuff. Stuff can be used, as you mentioned before. You know, you got to pay the bills. You've got to have a furnace to heat your home. Having stuff is okay as long as we're not worshiping stuff, and that's the focus or the goal of our lives. Maybe talk about that concept for just a minute.
Yeah, I think Jesus pretty much said, hey, all these things, all these rules that you've heard about are summed up in this. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind. And the second is like it, love your neighbor as yourself. And none of those things include stuff. None of those things include giving up a relationship with God or giving up a relationship with people in order to seek things. And so it's about priorities and placement. And God and people have to come first on the priority of things that you're doing. And so if your things are getting in the way of those, then get rid of your things and put God and put people in their proper place.
Absolutely. And that segues perfectly into a final verse to close today's show with, and that's Matthew 6, verses 19 through 21. Matthew 6, 19 to 21. It says, "Do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust destroy, and where thieves break in and steal. But instead, lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroys, and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." So if our heart is in earthly stuff, that's going to be our focus. If our heart is in heaven, relationships with the Lord, relationships with others, that's where we're going to be. Pastor Brad, thanks for being with me today. I think this is a really important episode, a good reminder for people to keep in mind where their focus needs to be. And any final thoughts before we close up today?
People are more important than stuff. So go outside, relax, enjoy life, have fun, breathe easy, unplug, but also meditate and listen to God's word and have a relationship with him too.
Absolutely. Well, hey, everybody, thanks for watching today. We appreciate you taking the time to listen to this video and to listen to Pastor Brad and me talk about what we think are some really important Christian living concepts. We'll be back again with another video soon, and to make sure you get all of the content from Christian Clash, please click that subscribe button so we can get everything right to you. For Christian Clash, I'm Baron Von Spee. May the Lord bless you and keep you.